I thought you were coming up with the world. There you go. A better view from up here. These are nice chairs.
That's the
They
back.
are.
Is
I
that-
find them really,
Yeah,
there's back supportive the whole.
yeah, that's what's superb about them. Yes.
We're good to proceed, Mayor Rochford.
Welcome, members of council, to this meeting, special meeting of, to discuss our budget. And on that note, we proceed with the adoption of the agenda.
Councillor Kane and Councillor. The draft agenda presented to council for the special meeting and dated May 11th, 2023, be hereby adopted as.
Favor? All carried. Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest thereof. There being none. So we proceed and, Mr. Ritchie, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Rochford. So this is our first meeting of the budget deliberations for the 2023 budget. We will begin this morning with capital budget, and we will take a short lunch break and then proceed in the afternoon with operating budget deliberations. From the get-go, I will mention to council that we are starting with a high enough increase. So we're probably hovering around 16%, which is not one we've dealt with in the past. Big chunk of that, about 5% of it. Last year, we balanced our budget using about 5% of from reserves. When you really look at it, without that 5% this year, you're kind of starting off with a 5% increase. Plus, we knew it was going to be a rough year for us to begin with due to inflation. So big costs for us. You're going to see fuel oils are up, insurance is up. We went through a new collective agreement, so salaries are up. So there's quite a bit, and as we go line by line through the budget, you'll get the reasons why. But when I look at it, if you're sitting around 16% and you had 5% that you used from reserves last year, you're hovering around 11. So there are some cuts that can be made. We're going to go through budget capital first, and then after that, we'll discuss how the capital budget affects the tax increase, because that's like our starting number. And then from there, we'll work our way through. So starting off this morning, we've got Antoine here, our engineer, and he's going to go through public works and environmental services. And actually, it's just kind of public works. Two documents have been handed out. So this one here is a summary of all the capital works. And then Antoine's got his own presentation that's been circulated. So Antoine's going to present off of this document here. So everyone should have it in front of them. And you can start when you're ready, Antoine.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, councilors, see today. So as Jason was saying, there's basically two summaries, the table that we have, and then also to the side a little bit of a presentation, because it's got a schematic. Sometimes I like to just kind of tear out the first page and then go item by item to give you an idea of what they are. So we have various discussions in the road needs study, as we have with the road needs study different needs. There's few roads that are in desperate needs of repair, but one of the ones that we've identified for the year for 2023 is one that has been under the radar for many years. The subdivision, the development behind the Fresh Market in the village in Astorville. It's home to all the little roads that we see. So we have Akron, Astor, Pepper, and Denise Drive. That development was built in the 2000. Hasn't had any reconstruction or anything done. If we take the total of all those roads, they do add up to about 1.375 kilometers. So that kind of adds up to, give you an idea of the equivalent of length of a road. We finished the road needs study. They were identified as a road condition being varying from poor to very poor. What it means in terms of technical numbers is they refer to a PCI, pavement condition index. And well, it's not really good. It's an 18 to 35. So some sections are really, really poor. And then up to 35. 35 is the best section we've had. So Usually when we have a threshold of 50 in a range of for PCIs, it just basically say you cannot no longer do any maintenance. It's the only way to fix them is a full reconstruction. So these are the numbers that kind of justify the need of reconstruction. This would require basically pulverizing of the existing, putting new granulars, replacing the approximately 5 or 6 culverts I think we have on that road, and putting a new lift of material. In some section, we need some excavation and replacing a little bit of base, some areas. The estimate with this for the paving, because it's going to be 1 coat of asphalt at the end with 1 new layer of asphalt. So we're at estimated our cost of $525,000. This is including our tax, and then that's basically the estimate for that project. So we've identified it as the priority number 1 for roads for this year. And that's that for that. I'm not sure if I can go on and explain the next items. If you want, then we can revisit it.
I'm waiting for questions at this,
Okay.
one item at a time, yeah, for sure.
So on the second page, actually, of the description, it just gives you an overview of all the.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I did have a question.
Sorry, Antoine, what I meant was, I think it's a good time now to discuss that one project. So revisiting will save time.
Okay.
So I'm so sorry, you didn't say that the road study that it never came before council, but did it go before the public works? Oh, so
Draft
basically,
version.
a draft version, so this is coming forward here as well with this. So basically, of all our roads, this is the worst, would that be correct, is my understanding?
It's a bit challenging when it comes to this because there's risk and impacts on it. So I mean, what I did on the bottom of that sheet, if you look at it, there's a bit of a section where I kind of highlighted certain items that we, as staff kind of identified but pulled out of the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
Because what happens is like we were hoping that there is some funding opportunities coming one our way.
Yeah.
So for instance, Goose Road is relatively expensive to do in-house fully.
Yeah.
So this would be identified as, I think, one of the worst roads as it stands right now. But if we could, take advantage of a funding opportunity and then apply the funding and identify this road, then we could have, a 10% share of our costs or 1/3.
Yeah.
So that's the reason it's a tough decision.
A discussion of Public Works Committee was, we looked at draft, and when I say we looked at a draft plan, we looked at schedules, pictures. So you knew this area was bad. We're trying to keep the tax rate increase low this year. So the thoughts were, this certain section of roads has been discussed multiple terms of council. There was always seemed to be a bigger priority. The thoughts was we can get this done with almost money that we've got without borrowing. Right? So we've got gas tax, we've got OCIF for 100, gas tax for 400 and some. So the road is paid for, basically that size. If we went to Grew Road and it was 900,000 or $1 million.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to borrow for a road, which doesn't make sense either. If we ended up with a road grant that paid 50-50, we could say, okay, well, let's save 2 years of gas tax and there's our 50% and done, right? Because Grew is expensive. I kind of look at it like Leighton Osborne, when we split it up over 3 years of one term of council, we did a third. That was the only way to get it done, right?
Right.
It's an expensive one. So the thoughts this year is at least we get a chunk of roads done that are in really bad condition. Something that's talked about for a while and it's cash kind of thing.
The second page too, maybe once you're done, maybe we'll have a chance to look at it and it'll give you a good overview of all the roads, but sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't want you to take a look at it. There's some great issues I've dealt with.
Yes.
So if you're gonna go that point, now as far as you going back over these roads, in the past, what we've done is you end up doing the culverts 1 year, then you can apply for funding for the following year. You always like to do your culverts 1 year and let them settle before you put any asphalt on. So maybe that's what we can look at. But as far as number one road that we've been talking about for years, and it's pretty bad. Even the seniors have trouble walking with the vehicles. So I would agree with that.
And then maybe if I can add to the point of the culverts, The consultant that's been retained to do the culvert investigation, they've been working all week. They're going at very good pace. They have two teams. I think they're done more than 1/3 of the roads. They started on the Trout Lake and they're making their way south. So you might see them with two black vehicles. So they're doing work and that's another benefit to us is that as they identified the worst condition culverts throughout the entire network, the ones that fall under the blue and there may be some others. So that's going to be helpful too. So that information is coming relatively soon. I would say within about a month or so they will be done.
I agree with the logic that Blue Road has more potential for getting funding. I think that's a good point. We had already applied for funding for that road, right, when they were, but they did just the Chisholm part. But now they have an obligation to finish all of it at some point. Anyway, I just, those were just my question. Thank you.
Yesterday, Madame Mulrooney spoke. And she said, anything, because people ask the same question, we're not getting any funding. She says, for emergency funding, there's things out there. You have to talk to your local MPs, where it is. But there is funding out there for anything that's like, if it's a danger to society or danger to the traffic, there is stuff out there available. So that might be the opening for Gurus Road more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. We have a business case to make that for sure.
And if I can bring just quickly the attention, if that's, I'll maybe go ahead first.
So in saying that, and I agree, I know the totality of our issues with some of our roads. In saying that, and not to get off track here, what's your game plan for Guru Road right now? So I was on it the other day and it's terrible. Like it's a mess, and I'm not throwing anything out there that everybody doesn't know, because everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But what's your game plan right now to actually kind of carry us through the spring and the summer right now?
Well, I mean, as we go off the high water, the moisture in the ground, all of that is like the time where nothing holds, right? So we just finished putting pole mix and pothole and repairs and fixes, and that's the kind of fixes that we can do. The summer months are coming, which usually things hold better. You know, I wish it could be constructed, but the issue is that you know, then it's a big hit on our own costs. So the issue is that we're trying to be selective in knowing that we have certain amounts of money that comes from different sources. Use those sources, then we're limited in the full cost of it. So that's basically what we're saying. So what can we do? Well, as the summer months are coming and the better temperature is coming, then the full mix bottles and work that we can do. In about a day, we can send 2 teams and then cover the entire area. So that's the maintenance part. So we keep on doing this as we go through the winter. It's a different situation because once it's winter, it's all frozen. So it's always going to be the spring and the fall that's the worst. And then next year, we'll have to really look at how do we handle it, because eventually it's going to come to the point that this is, you know, if we're saying that for now, we have to remember that it's red flag, and that's the reason why it's even shown on our breakdown. It's flagged because it has to be one of the next ones.
Well, I guess the question perhaps that's programs that we're trying to do.
What I gathered out of it is that it's gonna be on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that you're gonna be down there. Because when I went down to Cam Cruise the other day, and I was attacked by 3 different residents while I was trying to buy some oil and filter for my lawn tractor. And when I drove down there, it was like, wow, like potholes over a foot deep.
Yeah.
So,
Because we actually,
so if you're saying that you're on a calendar, you're gonna pay attention to it this week, because that's where we're at with it. If you're saying you're on it and you're gonna keep an eye on it, your supervisor is gonna keep an eye on it, as well as the guys. So there's gonna be some due diligence with regards to that. Okay,
So
so
Monday-
I'm okay with that. So
you know, this Monday, this week, We went from one end to the other. We had two teams. We managed to do the entire road for the day. So
Yeah, well, I came in and advised the CEO because of the situation that was taking place with me as well as when I was driving on it. So it wasn't because you guys just stumbled on it.
Yeah.
It was partly because the counselor went in there and said something. So as long as there's a maintenance program or some sort of schedule on it, then and we know that. We also know that South Shore is in a bad situation as well as Village Road. I know there's, you know, it goes on.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
okay, all right.
The spring is definitely the most challenging time of the year.
Yeah.
The fall is.
Lived out here all my whole life.
But on the other hand, too, but do the same, but on the other hand, all the stuff we put down to roads and have an answer, this is budget meeting, so. Kind of hard to be here all day talking about this stuff, right? But all the stuff that we do.
Now, Councilor Shabbat, I really like what you brought forward, that this could be a file that we develop now and seek funding now, because it isn't an emergency, or there's a dangerous situation here. So to your point, I'd say that at the same time, we should give that go ahead to seek to develop that business case to go forth.
Well, shovel ready, that's basically what you got. looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
I would look at, if that's the case, there's always wordings. So you're gonna have to see what the government's defining as emergency.
Yes.
So your first, that's your first part before you apply to anything, see what the wording is and what's the definitions of them, and then it's the same thing. We're one of the better town municipalities around here, so it's good. That's gonna be a tough sled to push. So.
Yeah.
But we have some assets on our side, in this particular case, so how do we use these to our benefit? We haven't done anything.
And there's something particular with that route is that as you go to the Chase and there, they just were lucky enough to have funding and then they were able to read their section of road. So it gives the impression that they have a really, you know, tough condition road. They have a 90.
Well, it's on the bus, but it can be BR too. It's an emergency, something happens on a highway, you can take people down.
That's right.
Just
So I'll leave you with the map eventually, and then eventually you can kind of, you know, plot refer, and then obviously when you see green is good. Yellow is border somewhat, and red is not, and then exactly, you know, when we look at this, we're kind of challenged with the red sections that we see.
And just also it made it also to Lauren here. So that was, we ended up getting a grant. And that's how all that came about, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, the study on that was a grant from a grant. So they went around and did only asphalt roads only, not gravel. And that's where all that information comes from.
So the second item on the list that we have is the drainage improvement. So we've talked about this before, but it's now to actually implement and do the implementation of a new stereo catch basins and then bringing water from onto Gus Road from a certain point and outletting to what we're going to be basically.
This item's a carry forward item from a prior year.
That's right. So this is all work we would be doing in-house. And the estimation has been revised to reflect today's cost.
But wasn't this money flagged? We flagged this money before.
Yeah.
Prior.
This is the prior year's item that's carried forward.
Yeah.
Just they didn't run out of time. Equipment last year was.
Well, it was 2 years ago, actually.
Yeah.
Or it was 2 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Or I think it was on the plate for last year.
Yeah, there was, so like now we are basically finalizing agreement with the owner. Once it's in place, then we can actually carry on. The next one is the gravel program. I thought of just giving a bit of a color map, so it gives you an idea. You see the 4 streets that we've identified, but the map adjacent to it just kind of give a better overview of the roads that are flagged. So the gravel is an overall maintenance that we have to do, and we have a cycle where we come back to these roads. This year we have the Wallet and Main cities and Los Park identified for the 2023. So the cost of about the projected cost of about just almost 8,000, 436 tons is what we calculated for this. So that's the tonnage that we priced, and that's the price for the budget for that tonnage. We actually get the material delivered to us, and then we shape it and grade it in-house.
It's also Corbeil, it's both Asheville and Corbeil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says Astorville area on plan, but there's actually levying.
Based on last year, yes, it's,
Yeah.
Last year we had that excellent gravel, and I know you say that's just a coincidence, but is there a way to get that same gravel again?
it's challenging because there's different, every pits and quarries are different and the stone behaves different. Last year was a really good material that, it's material that binds really nicely. But because we do tender, because of the quantity, once we tender, then we award by the lowest price. So,
And they all meet the MTO spec.
the NPO specs, so it is a quarry, but it's to remain competitive. So we are, sometimes we may prefer certain material than another, but because of the tendering process, we're bound by, the following the procedures of tendering.
So there's no specifications that we can add to quarry granular A, like.
It's an MTO spec. If it's on the bottom,
So
we have to accept it.
that's what it is.
It's kind of like they both meet the specs, but one might be better
Better.
product, but they both meet the specs. So it's very hard to, yeah.
Yeah, unless you have a reason to justify from previous, something you found that was fault. And then in that case, you can reject certain people from bidding, but in the past years, the ground has always met specification regardless of who's bidding. So this is the next item we have is the active transportation. This number that you see is kind of based on the 10% on the summary of the page that you have. It's the full amount.
Yeah, so the project in total is 1.7 million and we put in our 10%. That was what the minimum was for NOHFC. So 171. The rest is funded. Well, except for NOHFC, we're anticipating that funding.
So we cover the Centennial McPherson area. We want to widen the road to a platform of A4. In some sections right now, we're short a little bit. It's not exactly that. And the diagram down below shows different dimensions, but generally speaking, what we're doing is it's a 1.2. We recognize a 3 meter lane for the road. We recognize a 1.2 for the lane for the active transportation. So this would be for the McPherson Centennial project. And the last one is identified under capital, but it's actually underway. We had a special meeting approval of that board. And it's to complete the culvert evaluation, which will be done, as I said, within about a month, like final report. So that gives you the overall capital projects identified in this year. And then down below, if you see that we just simply flagged the Grew Road, obviously the bridge has a little bit of a safety work that's been identified over the 1 to 2 years. So we defer it to next year. And then eventually the patrol vehicle, it's a 2017 Dodge. So we've identified it for a future year to come. So it just, I wanted to just include those for your information as. Okay.
Any other questions for Antoine?
But the active transportation wasn't going to cost us anything.
Oh, that's what we approved that, it came before we voted.
We came at a meeting in April. It would have been April.
Be able to go ahead to, the
NOHFC.
grant to NOHFC. He said that this was the 10% they requested us to put forward.
I didn't think that came out because we were still waiting.
Wasn't it?
It hasn't improved yet.
Yeah, the NOHFC is, it's,
Yes.
It's supposed to the
So
next
we
meeting.
had a meeting in April and what the discussion was with NOHFC is we pushed at first to go through and do either 2 or 3% was going to be our contribution because it's a small amount, but the committee came back and said, we're not going to approve anything to recommend to the board unless there's a minimum 10% applicant contribution. So then we came back to council and council approved the 10% contribution. Went back to NHFC, told them that we're gonna go ahead with 10%. It's going to a committee meeting this month and a board meeting next month. The only way it makes a board meeting next month is if the committee recommends it to the board for next month's meeting. So that's where that's happening.
Okay, because when we looked at it, there was enough in there to make up a difference if there was. Then we approved it and we said, well, as long as the tender comes in around that price range, then
Yeah,
so that's what we would do.
this whole project's gonna come down to what the tender value is.
Tender comes up.
Because we got,
So it's not a tender price.
no,
No,
Oh, no,
it's based,
1.7 is what the grant money is.
exactly.
yeah, so what had happened, Councilor Trahan, is when we put it forward to Infrastructure Canada, the project budget is 1.7, like based on an estimate.
Yeah.
We gotta remember that that was pandemic times as well. They allowed us a 25% contingency because they understood it was pandemic times. So that number could come in anything. It could come in less, it could come in much more. We're just not sure.
Yeah.
So the idea now is if NHFC comes forward and says you're approved, well, then we've got 90% funding. Put it out to tender, see what that value is. If the value comes in at 3 million, well, I would say it's dead on arrival because we can't go back to Infrastructure Canada and say we need another million or two, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good. So we're now gonna move on to facilities and recreation.
Merci.
Thanks, Antoine. Now we're gonna go from the summary. Greg's gonna present the items from facilities and recreation. This budget, quite a bit of it revolves around funding that we've already been approved for. I would say about 80% of this is ISIP. We've discussed it in the past. It's one that's, we can spend over a few years, so. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, good morning, everyone. So I'll just jump right into it. The first thing on the agenda is the kitchen renovations, which I know the council is well aware of. The renovations are now complete. And then I believe we have a tour. Have we talked about a tour of the kitchen? Yeah, so we'll see the kitchen soon anyways, but I don't want to see pictures, but it looks great. Unless did a really good job on it. That was all, so this funding all came through the funding that we received when we did the repairs to the roof trusses at the arena.
Yeah.
So this has all been accounted for already as part of that project.
Yeah.
But
Just for council's info, we had about a project of about 1.1 million. We got $100,000 from the COVID fund, ISIP COVID, bringing it to $1 million. Then we had to put in about $500,000, just say, it was actually like 450,000. We borrowed the money from RBC on a term loan for our amount. So basically the rest, like we pre-borrowed, I guess I would say. Now, once this is done, we're submitting a claim to NHFC.
So is there any questions about the kitchen renovations?
No, I guess they're gonna be the final, so I guess you wait for the helping.
Yeah.
The final.
So the healthy is coming on Monday. So we have everything data we're expecting to go fine, but Monday is the day we should get final sign off.
Yeah, has the dishwasher been installed now?
Yeah.
Like not installed, but it's operational?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was needed for the health unit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically our plan is all of the stuff with the appliances is ready. The only thing on our end is we need to make sure we have appropriate like soap dispensers, paper towels, dispensers. So we have all of that, and the health unit will advise us on Monday if they are exactly they want in place to meet their regulations. And then they should be able to give us final sign off.
Perfect. I'll speak to the next one, Greg, just
Yeah.
because I worked on it, but this one here is a carryover from last year. Well, actually, it crossed two different periods. So it went May to May. So the project was supposed to be done by this May, but we've gotten a 6-month extension from Trillium Foundation. I'm working with Jennifer from the library on this one. Some of the items are done, like air filtration unit is done. Part of the project, and it's not listed here, was umbrellas outside or some kind of shading structure. So now Jennifer's looking at more of a pergola. So long story short, 79,000 is what was approved. It's 100% funded. So there is no contribution from us on this one here. One thing we're looking at right now is there's the public washroom. There's no janitorial room there. So we had worked with Brian Bertrand on a drawing. We're not quite I don't want to say we're not happy with the drawing. I mean, Brian did what we asked him to do, but we still don't feel like it's good space. So the idea was Brian suggested to take the drop box for the books and put a drop box outside and then convert the drop box and add plumbing to make it a slop sink for a janitorial room with some shelving above. What we were trying to do was see if we can incorporate a slop sink inside the washroom and make the janitorial in there because there's already plumbing in there. So we're not quite happy with how it is, and that's why we got an extension to say, I think we'll bring another contractor in to say, do you see it differently, right? We're a little on the fence with the whole thing because like Jennifer, like we're working on a shovel-ready project for a future library expansion. Maybe the washroom will never even be there. Maybe that means now that there's a closet there for boots and jackets because you're aware of this, Council Kelly, from when you're on the board. Everyone walks in, they leave their shoes at the door, your socks are wet, you walk in, no jacket, like all of that. So I said to Jennifer, well, maybe in the future, that is actually a closet where people walk into it, hang a jacket, put their boots, leave the water there, come out on a cart, you know?
It's an issue in the winter.
Yeah, so but then Jennifer seems to say, well, Jason, if the project doesn't happen for 5-6 years, we still have this issue. So it's funded and we're gonna go ahead, but maybe in a different way. So that's that project there, 100% funded. Go ahead.
Okay, the next two items are related. So the playground structure, outdoor ring, shed, skate room, beach replacement is all part of ISIP. And the item afterwards, the volleyball course, that's not an ISIP related item. But maybe we'll talk about them all together since it's all part of the same site.
Yeah.
So Jason and I were talking before, that maybe it would be a good idea to have a bit of a general discussion about the whole Corbeil like recreation pump site in general. So we looked at a couple of different options for how to configure it best based on what the funding covers. And we've explored the idea of relocating the septic system from its current location to behind the Corbeil Park Hall where the volleyball and playground are and kind of swapping them. Because once the fire hall is gone, it would give like a nice kind of street presence to the playground and park area. It's a little bigger, so it might be a little easier to configure. We ran into some, I'd say, pretty insurmountable issues with septic permitting to make that happen. Just the way the conservation authority would allow permits, it wouldn't really allow us to disconnect the fire hall from the septic to have it removed. So we wouldn't be able to finish this project within our ISIP funding timelines. So for that reason, what we've kind of set on, I think, is leaving the septic where it is. And when we drill down a bit deeper, there is enough space to fit a volleyball court reconstruction and the playground in that location. So I just wanted to give a bit of background on how we kind of got there. The reason why I included the volleyball courts in the capital budget request this year is because if we're doing all the kind of effort through ISIP to rebuild a like nice new playground or redoing the outdoor rink, eventually like next year is gonna be a lot of like site work. It would be really nice to have everything kind of be brand new. And on top of that, our volleyball court is seen better days, I guess I would say. The sand is really all bleeding out into the surrounding grass area. They have to till it constantly because the quality of the sand itself is quite poor. So we put a lot of work and it doesn't really look that great. So I ran some quotes for like a really nice kind of rubber edging material for the volleyball court. It makes it look like nice and professional, and it helps keep all the sand contained within like the play area. And so we want to do that, and a new net supports and an umpire chair in the middle and everything. Or a referee, I guess it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a volleyball.
Right now, there's a wooden square box with a makeshift ladder on the side of it that someone climbs up onto. I mean, I would suggest whether we would go ahead with this project or not, that we look at that item. I would hate that it falls apart, so.
So it would be about $30,000 to do the edging material, brand new volleyball sand. So 35, sorry, yeah, 30 was the other one. And then all of the costs for the 649,500 That's all of our ISIP related items together, and we're hoping to do all of those items listed this year. So it would be a busy summer to get all that done, but we think it's doable.
So with ISIP, just for council's information to remember, we contribute 27%, 26.67% of the cost. The rest is funded through ISIP. With this, just to run some quick numbers for council, the playground structure is roughly about $135,000 based on a project that North Bay had tendered last year. The outdoor rink, the idea with that was we were not going to do the cover. That was a decision that council had made. But what we're looking at is new boards and a new base. So basically a new concrete base. And then the idea of the shed, that was not going to be put through ISIP. Reason being, we're looking at moving the skate room Royal Park Hall and giving exclusive use to the seniors club to lease the entire facility. Moving a skate room to a structure that's just say a shed or a garage, with a part being a skate room and the other part being storage for that area, basically for equipment. So that's that piece to it. Bit of a discussion we had with the skating room is right now, if you use the skating room in the Royal Park Hall, you have a nice room to use. So whenever there's a caretaker, I would say at the outdoor rink, the doors are unlocked. So the public can use washrooms, right? And it's a heated building. If you go from that to something that's not heated, no washroom, you're going to hear from the public, right? I don't think we go the opposite way. So talks have been that the skate room would have a washroom facility, it's heated, that idea behind it. And then bleachers have seen better days as well. The concrete pads are cracked, grass coming through them. I'm not sure when the bleachers were ever done. It's prior to my time. So the idea was to do new bleachers overlooking the soccer field. That was a nice item that we had discussed. Yeah. South Shore.
Okay, on South Shore, so the subject will launch, so this is the strategic plan item that we passed in our strategic plan earlier this year. Basically, the Nosmond Anglers and Hunters approached municipality with an interest in partnering with us on this redevelopment project. We looked at all the different things that would need to be done for it. So basically parking lot expansion, new ramp on both sides for each of the launches, and a new dock that would mirror the existing docks. Basically have two. So right now there's just one boat ramp and one floating dock, and we would essentially mirror that and double it. And so that plus all the site work. We figure we should probably be in about the 60,000 range. So the Nosmond Anglers and Hunters has offered to split the project 50-50 with us and contribute 30,000. So that would be approximately 30,000 for our costs for that project.
Putting the new docks.
Not that big,
Yeah.
not that big, you're in deep water fairly quick.
We got an exact quote for that, just as it's factored in pretty well on it.
The cold fund and stuff.
They grind, they built the one that's on site right now, so we asked them to provide a quote for the exact same thing, and it was for the exact dollar value, but it was 9,000 something for. Yeah, and then the ones that are there, they did a good job of it, I think, so, yeah.
Any questions about any of the items? Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
So we'll now move on to fire and emergency services, and our fire chief Steph's here with us. We'll go over a few items.
Good morning, afternoon.
Afternoon now.
Hey, chief. All right, so I guess we'll just get right into it. We've got our capital budget here. Some of this, one of the first things on here is ongoing item that we do every year is our bunker suits. For $10,750. That's part of an ongoing project that we replace that every year just to keep all our suits current. We can't have suits that are older than 10 years. We're doing entry back, so as part of the planning to keep that going. Any questions on that part? That's
You replace so many every year.
We do, yeah, we do 5 years. That's kind of an ongoing capital item.
And your complement would be like 27 or something.
Right now, I think we're on 26 right now. So, but we do plan to bring that up. Good. By the end of the year. Next item on here is the drilled well in Asheville. It's been an ongoing item for a little while, been a problem. Lack of water or quality of water hasn't been that good over there. Sometimes when you wash your hands, you wonder if your hands are dirtier after you wash them, as opposed to before. So quote on that, the actual quote was just over 35,000 for the well. I budgeted for 45. The 35 only brings us water to the building, not into the building, so then we have to sub that into a plumber to bring the water into the building, and then the plumbing is quite old in there, so once you get into it, things just tend to happen, right? So a little bit of contingency in there. Hopefully that'll give us enough to replace the hot water tank in there as well, because I'm pretty sure it's original to the building. I'm sure it's only got half capacity left in it, the rest of it's.
Can you speak to the depth of the well stuff?
Yeah, so the quote that I got for the well was from Marshall. They just did the one at the school, and they're looking, when they did the one at the school, they're about 500 to 600 feet where they hit water. So, and that's not a high capacity well. There's just not that much water over there, but at least, it'll be clean water. Any questions on?
No, all of Asheville's the same way. The village proper.
Just a couple of questions, 45, you're just talking about, water coming out of that, been the best in all times, but you got a contingency in there, might have to put water to that or treatment.
Not for this year. That's probably something we'll look at for next year. I figure we kind of go one step at a time. I don't think the 45 would cover having any type of water treatment in there. Figure we get the well put in and see what we've caught, and then kind of go.
You know, suggest I might make is Mike, you want to talk to fire and a few of these places, because I'm just dealing with one person there now, and there's a difference between $6,000 between two well builders, so.
Yeah, we'll definitely get all those before we head with it. Yeah, this was just something like I got a price from them at the end of the year, like last year. So yeah, the prices have gone up substantially over the last couple of years, so I could see that there'd be a lot of difference. Okay. Scene lights for 7,200. We have lighting. It's not adequate for, I wouldn't call it adequate for scene lighting. It's good for area lighting. When we get into an incident where we got to get around the back of a building or something like that, we need some lighting to be able to light up the area. We've got poles back there that we can trip on. We've got, falling debris. We need to be able to see.
It's a safety issue.
It is a safety. Yeah. We have these lights, these particular lights on our trucks right now. We know they're great lights. They're extremely bright. They're very rugged. We've been running now for 6 years and haven't had any issues. So, yes, there are different lights out there. These specific lights, we know they work. So. Dry hydrants, this was something that was in the strategic plan going forward with the Anchor Shuttle accreditation. One of the first steps to acquiring that is going to be to secure some water sources in the area. So this is the first step towards that. For 20,000 in, the cost of materials for one dry hydrant, varies depending on site to site, but you're roughly $5,000 per dry hydrant. So if with the 20,000 we could get 3 for this year with a little bit of extra there, maybe we can buy all the supplies to get all 4 of them. And we kind of see where it goes. We do what we can with that cost this year, and then next year maybe we put in another 20. Either a few more dry hydrants, or one of the other things we're looking at is cisterns as well for the municipality. So this would kind of be an ongoing cost for the next 2 or 3 years to secure the water sources that we need.
At the fire committee level, we had a discussion around the need for dry hydrants and cisterns. Some would put a number to it, like the number of dry hydrants, number of cisterns. And I believe the cost was close to just say $80,000. So the thoughts, were right? So the talks were, if we put $20,000 aside for the next 4 years, this term of council, we'll see what we can get done with 20,000. And then next year, see what we can get done with 20,000 until it's done basically. So that was the idea, and maybe work towards tanker shuttle certification by the end of the term, right? As a strat plan item, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say 20,000 is not gonna cover it.
No. But it's better than throwing in 80,000 this year, right? So.
I found that truck, I sit on the price right now, it's actually. I won't say cheap, but I'll say low. I was just talking to one company the other day. So I think to buy what we need now and then get done what we can get done and then house the rest. Because I think that price is gonna go up. And like you said, we don't know sometimes, like we don't know how far down or how far out you gotta go sometimes. Yeah, it'll vary from site to site, right? Site to site.
You'll know what your price are hiding and you won't know what your cost is installing them, because I did some on calendar and you had to condemn with water. So you had to dam, you had to do,
Yeah.
so that's where your cost would.
Yeah, so I've been working with Greg on a lot of the permitting and stuff like that. And then so 3 of the sites that we're looking at, hopefully get done for this year, we need 3 more. So Big Moose, Door and Pearson. And our roads crew can do. Thing all of it. So we don't really have to outsource it to additional contractors to get that stuff done.
Questions? No?
And the last item on here is kind of just an FYI, bumper truck we were asked to replace our PT6. So this is the one that's currently in the shop right now, but it is a 2007. Which has been discussed in the past, is not keeping our apparatus current, so not having anything over 20 years old. Which is also the requirement for the tanker shuttle accreditation to keep that as well. So costs have increased substantially with these trucks. When we first purchased this particular truck, we paid just over 200,000 for this truck. And now, once we get into this, we've got preliminary quotes of, from 700 to 850,000. So that truck's not exactly the same type of truck. We need to change the design a little bit on them, but it's they're going to be substantial items coming in the future. It's kind of an FYI. Heads up.
Can you speak to the lead time on something like this as well, Steph? Because we discussed that at the committee level.
Yeah, so any truck right now that you're ordering, you're looking at about 2 years. Unless you get a stock trucks that they have there, which, I mean, there's the potential to have that if they've got what we need. But yeah, any regular truck you're looking at, 2 years.
The reason we bring that up is that if council wants tanker shuttle certification by the end of a 4-year term. You got to think of the equipment, because if your equipment's over 20 years old, then you can't get that certification, right? And if it takes 2 years to order a truck and get it, you could be making a decision this year and saying, go ahead and order it. We're 2 years out.
Yeah, but you're not guaranteeing price neither. They're not gonna guarantee the price 2 years.
They will on one item, was it not?
Just
Well, it depends on how you want to purchase it. There's multiple ways of doing it. So, if we were to just say we give a go ahead to order a truck now, we can either pay for the entire truck now
At today's price.
and then we get it delivered in 2 years. Or we pay for, so half the truck, so we'll say the cabin chassis, we buy that, that's ours, that sits there. And then we pay the balance on it.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different.
The differences.
of doing it.
Yeah, because you go to Zingro, you buy the truck, then you bring it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once the box gets installed, which they're booking for 2024.
Yeah.
They're whatever the price of steel is at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Same idea. Yeah. We just want to flag that one, and not move ahead, obviously, this year on it in terms of funding it. But just putting council. What's the age of the other one, Steph?
06.
The one that wanted.
You can speak to the age of the other trucks, just so council has the big picture.
So the next oldest truck, I guess, would be the 2012 bumper.
Okay.
Over here, but when it gets replaced, It'll be replaced with the same type of truck that we're looking to replace 6 with, which will then replace 2 trucks in one. Instead, so
So you're still looking at bumper tankers?
no, we're gonna look at first. And tankers separately. To have the extra water on the truck, we're losing too much storage, and the water that's on the truck doesn't do anything for us on scene, especially if we're going with dry hydrant system.
Okay.
Because we need the pumper to be at that dry hydrant, so it doesn't matter how much water. But we need storage space for.
Okay.
We're running it quickly. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. That's good. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks,
We-
Steph. So for council, we can flip to the second page. So we've, all the items that's gone over, there's nothing under general government, so that's blank. Last year, we had a server, we had a municipal building that it's done with. So if you look at the funding sources, so if council was to approve this, this is basically one way of funding it. So let's start with external funding sources. So if you look, we've got just say $2.8 million in funding that, was approved except NOHFC for the active transportation. So we'll go down the first, just to let council know, 4 roads right now for 2023, we've got $448,000 available for the gas tax. Of the 448, we would need to use about $425,000 this year. That's to do Catherine Denise, Trappers and Astor. The next line, we've got $100,000 from OCIF. That's our annual. The amount doesn't change. It's not based on an application. It's a formula-based funding. The next item, Infrastructure Canada, it's $1,027,433. That's active transportation. That's approved. Ontario Trillium Foundation, $150,000, same project, active transportation. The next item, NOHFC, $363,718. That's the one that's sitting at the committee level at NOHFC for active transportation. So that's not approved yet. The next item, $252,850 is funding we received from NOHFC for the kitchen renovations. $79,000 is the next one from Ontario Trillium Foundation for the library work. And our next item, $476,278 would be ISIP. So the difference, we put in 27%. That's the difference there for what we plan to do this year.
Question?
Yes.
Your federal funding, your provincial funding for your, for McPherson Drive to Pernville.
Yep.
You got $1,027,000.
Yep.
That was $1.7 million.
The entire project is, but when you add $1,027,000 plus $150,000 from Trillium,
Yeah.
plus $362 from NOHFC, plus our $171,000, you're at 1.7.
Okay, then consider 175.
It's coming down the line
Okay.
because it's not external funding.
Okay.
So let's speak to the next, so total funding, $2.8 million with NOHFC, not a given at this point. So the next section, capital levy in the operating budget. So basically, this is the amount of money that we have sitting there, cash to put towards capital items. You'll see in red, I increased it by 2.63% this year to bring it to $1,172,000. The reason I did that is you'll find out as you go, there's certain items we wouldn't borrow money for to pay for them, right? So if you look 1.172, we've got debt servicing costs this year of about $660,000. So that's principal and interest on our debt. We have to budget for it. So it leaves about $512,260 cash to put towards capital. The next section, pay as you go, $512,188. So basically mirrors that amount we have. Without adding 2.63%, we need to shave or borrow more money or use reserves. That's how that works, right? So if you look down the list under pay as you go, public works, you got the culvert evaluation for 23. Drainage improvements for 80. Active transportation, there's our 171,238 is our 10%. The gravel road program, 155. These are items I would say, like when it comes to road work and that and studies, you don't borrow money to pay for them, right? It's cash. Under the fire department, bunker suits for 10,750, scene lights for 7,200. the dry hydrants for 20,000 and the drill well at the Asphalt Fire Hall for 45,000. So your total is about 512,000. To be able to fund the whole capital program, the bottom plug of 238,000 is where we'd have to get loans, either IO, RBC or elsewhere, right? The way I've structured this one was more if I had to pitch it to like an RBC or an IO, it's like kind of like a recreation loan. You look at the volleyball courts are in there for 35, South Shore Boat Launch for 30, and then our share of the ISIP amount, so 27% amounts to about 173,000. So we'd have to borrow about $238,000 to make this all work. So if council doesn't want to borrow 238, we need to shave 238,000 out of pay-as-you-go items or somewhere, right? If you don't want to increase by 2.63%, then we've got quite a bit to shave. The tough part with this is almost every item is tied to a funding program that we've been approved for. Right? Like the only thing you're able to kind of pull away from is like a gravel road program for 155,000, right? Like you almost have to cut off the some pay-as-you-go items, cash items.
Can't do that in one of those.
So
That's my opinion.
No, something happens where now we're gonna be faced with millions of lawsuits.
Yeah.
and now the ISIP stuff, like you can say, okay, let's shift some to next year. The difference is you're not shifting 100%, you're shifting 27% what you're shifting. So I'll give you an example. You shift the outdoor rink at 250,000. Well, it's not 250 shaving off. It's 27%. Right?
What do we sit down in reserves?
We've got quite a bit of reserves.
What are I'm thinking, I know exactly where you're going, but the question is, we could go to tender on $1.7 million, it's in at $2.5 million. Well, then these items are coming off.
That's a council decision, right? So at that point, we'd save 171. Right? The 171 we were paying cash. All that would do is if we haven't borrowed yet for the other items, and I'll let council know the 238, I would not borrow till year end. Because we can cash flow till then and save on interest. And then you actually know what your actual costs are to be able to borrow actual, not an estimate, right? In case something was to come over the budget.
I have a question. As to the fire chief, you didn't put anything in for new hall. Now, have you got enough room right now to store all your fire equipment? Your trucks? Your trucks are outside.
Nothing outside, but we do require that anchor.
Okay. So have you done any thinking at all about it? Probably the wrong term, but have you considered when you want the new hall? Because if you're gonna be ordering a truck that's 2 years out, you gotta have a place to store it.
That item's actually in the strat plan. The fire hall, and it was towards the end of this term of council where we'd be basically at a shovel ready project. Is the idea, but we were gonna look for funding as well.
The last new truck, replace it.
Okay, so you're just,
In addition to,
right,
we'll have to wait for the fall.
and you'll be selling the old,
Yes.
there's nothing in there about that. That's fine.
Yeah.
I understand.
The old truck would have a salvage value. It's in good shape. It's old, it's just the age of it, right?
Yeah,
Not quite sure what the salvage value is.
I mean,
Considering a new one's 850, it might be what we paid for it.
Well,
you're probably looking pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
quite frankly, when you go to the fire conference
that's.
down in Huntsville, there's a number of trucks show up in there for sale.
You gotta think of small municipalities as well that don't have money, 850,000 for a brand new truck.
Exactly.
They look at one that's, it's the age, it's older, but it's in good shape. It's got low hours, it's maintained. They look at that and say, well, we can get 5 to 10 years out of it.
Yeah.
Right? So
The overall game plan is taking a little bit. So one is like the property over here. Second is, for the hall. The truck is another one, and then the truck, to sell the truck would be, like Jason nailed it a little bit there. Municipalities or townships like, Calvin, where they're not gonna have a program, where they all their trucks are 20 years plus. So they'd be looking for something like this. This truck is actually, for the amount of hours are on it, is actually really tractable to a lot of smaller municipalities.
Yeah.
And to jump on it, I don't know, Tara, about the cost or the value of it, but I would say we would get back a good chunk.
I would think so.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of,
So we're looking at basically, we're looking at basically a new haul for this. Hopefully,
yes,
but, okay, no, I was just wondering.
there's a lot of tough
Just
decisions,
wondering where, I know there's a long term plan, that's right.
Yeah.
But,
but it's just kind of baby steps. Other kind of make sure that we're not gonna filter one end too far here too quick. That's all.
oh, good, okay, thank you. Great.
And for me personally, I'd like to wait until the EC touch everything together before making
Right.
comments. So, but certainly,
If you look at the schedule that was circulated, by the time we end our lunch, or actually, we're gonna have a coffee break and then we're gonna get into. Here's where we're at, which I told you at the start of the meeting, it's not looking pretty, right? But then tomorrow afternoon, there's quite a bit of time, like I don't, if council doesn't want to go through till 3:30, that's fine, but there's a 12 till, there's about 3 hours to debate what you want to do. Do we give direction, we finish early, we come back to a meeting next week, right? So the idea wasn't to approve capital today, it was to look at the whole picture by the time noon comes tomorrow.
I think I had mentioned to you already, tomorrow I have to be at the health bureau by 11 o'clock. So I'll be there for about an hour, then I can come back.
I'll be here 10 after 10 in the morning.
Sounds good.
I'll be here with toothpicks in my eyes.
so do you have, you work that all say? Okay, we,
There will be here when Rick is leaving,
Yes,
sorry, okay, you.
but we still have three, yeah, for sure. So that's capital budget.
okay,
That's capital budget. You'll see as well, like garage is not in there. Garage was previously discussed. Garage was last year. Garage is going to be fully borrowed for is the idea. So no effect on the taxpayer. And on top of that, we would be some principal and interest of it by, yeah.
Are we in budget for the garage?
Are we, yeah,
Yeah, we are.
yeah. Just to let council know for that one there, we've already applied. It's been months to Infrastructure Ontario for a loan. I'm told that like we'll hear any day kind of thing on that. If we weren't successful there, we go to the Royal Bank, but I mean, in the end, we had to build a fire hall, right? So in these costs as well, the 660,000 in principal and interest, I've estimated what the rates would be for when we take on that loan, basically, so. What I've mentioned to Infrastructure Ontario is we'd be wanting the funds for the garage in June. So if we're good, I believe lunch is here, so we can break for lunch and we're on schedule.
lunch is here.
I believe so. I had seen a couple of people walk by the door.
Yes, you want me to go?
Yes.